BeeHive in the wood shop, and we're picking out wood. We're going to use rough cut oak that we cut on the sawmill here, and just trying to look at the dimensions we need to build our hive and figure out what parts of the board we're going to cut. The end of this board is a little messed up. We need a piece 45 inches long. And right here in the middle we got a couple big knots. So fortunately we got about 52 inches to the middle.
Maybe. Hey, Dad, can we use this to kill the worms?
Spray paint?
Mm-hmm.
Kill worms?
Yeah.
Isn't that going to make kind of a mess?
Yeah.
Why don't you just stomp on them?
No, it's no fun. Use this.
So, sometimes when you're picking a board out of rough cut, you got to work around the knots and you got to look at the sapwood. We need a piece right now about 5 inches wide, and it looks like out here at the outside we've got a lot of sapwood, but we've got, you know, just about 4 inches on this side, and then it spreads out on the other side, so we got plenty of good wood here in the middle. So we'll cut off, work around these knots, get our 5 inches of good wood out of the middle, and we'll have the board we need to make a BeeHive. Alright, now this operation is just a little tricky, but not that hard once you see how to do it. You can see I've got 30-degree angle cut ripped on the edge of the side. This is going to be the side of the TopBar BeeHive. Now there's the two caps that are kind of the trapezoidal shape, the front cap and the back cap. The back cap is just a little shorter than the front cap. That's because it sits flush with the sides. The front cap actually sits proud of the sides and matches up with the thickness of the top bars that sit across the hive. So in order to set my rip fence for my next cut, what I have is I have the back cap, which is going to, as I said, sit flush with the sides. I have it touching the blade, and then I have the edge of it up against this additional fence. I'd call it sacrificial, but it's actually a piece of wood we're going to use to build the hive with. It just happens to be planed and straight and nearby. So I've got it, and the reason we need that is we've got to keep it right down against the table because the edge of that corner is going to ride up against the fence. So we really need a board. The fence has a little bit of space above the table. We need a board that sits all the way down and it's clamped down tight to the table. Because when we run this piece, we're going to have to run it. See if I can show you this here. We're going to have to run it like this with the edge of my board up against my fence. Am I there? There we go, just like that. So there's a shadow in there, but that corner is riding right up against the fence. And then when we cut it, this side will match up perfectly to that back cap. Alright, I just ripped the side. You can see the off-fall sitting there next to the blade. Now if I can hold the camera here and show you this, I've got the board sitting on the top of the table, and then when I bring those two together at that 30-degree angle, sorry about that, bring those two together, you can't really see that, but there you go. The edge is perfectly flush. Perfect! There you go. That's how you do it. Good. Going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Alright, so what we're doing, we're gluing up a couple of boards to make the bottom of the BeeHive. And just give you a couple little tips here. I usually, on these longer boards, this stuff was rough cut, and the bandsaw mill that we used to rough cut the lumber out of the logs made a real nice, smooth, fairly smooth, flat cut. So we didn't even run these through the face joiner. We just ran them straight through the planer, and they were able to run okay, but they did have just a little bit of a bow to them. So flip the two boards so that one bowed this way and one bowed the other way, just a slight bow. We put biscuits in the two boards so that when we put them together, they would straighten each other. And by the time the glue dries, we'll have a pretty nice, flat, wide section of board you see the glue bead squeezing out in the middle. It's real tempting to take a rag and just try to wipe and clean that off. You don't want to do that. Two reasons. That water will dilute the glue and it'll soak into the surface. And you'll end up, if you don't clean enough of the surface off later, you'll end up with a big wide patch that won't take stain if you're building a piece of furniture. The other thing is it weakens the glue joint. This gives you the maximum amount of coverage of the glue when it hardens. And after it's hardened, it's real easy to take a sharp chisel, and I'll show you this, I'll demonstrate this, and you just come down and just clean that bead off. And once it's flat, I usually work with pieces that are not too wide that I can't put them back through my planer. I'll put it through the planer and just go one light pass on each side. We'll clean these boards up, make sure the whole thing is uniform thickness, and you won't be able to tell where one board stops and the other one starts if you do this right. So we're going to let that dry, and then we'll take it out of the clamps and I'll show you the glue clean off and the plane down in a little bit. Alright, we got the base, the landing board out of the clamps for the TopBar hive. And as I was saying, this bead of glue is hardened up now, and you just take a chisel, lay it down flat, and you kind of turn it at a little bit of an angle to the seam, and you just run right over that bead of glue like that. You don't have to get all the glue off. If the boards are just a little uneven like these are, we're going to run it back through the planer to get everything perfectly flat and clean all that glue, the rest of that glue off. So all we really need to do is get the glue flat against the board so that it'll run nice and flat when it goes through the planer. So we just kind of, and if you shave a little bit of wood, it's not going to hurt anything. You just want to be careful that you don't dig in. If you start to peel up a piece of wood, just stop and come at it from the other direction. Sometimes, depending on how the grain of the wood runs, if it starts to, see there? Just a little touch right in through here. That's all it takes. Now it's flat and ready to run through the planer. Okay, we get the stand screwed together. We got the landing board sitting up on top. And right now we're just rounding off the corners with the jigsaw. We cut the opening for the entrance to the BeeHive right here with the jigsaw, and now we're going to cut a rectangular opening to put a glass window so we can slide. We're going to have a little slide on the outside, but we can slide that open and look in and see what the bees are doing without pulling the cover off the hive, which is less stress on the bees and less chance of getting stung whenever you go to look at them. So before I cut the window out, I'm just going to drill holes in opposite corners here where I need the opening, so I've got a spot to get my jigsaw blade started, and then I can square it up to the line as I go. One trick when you're drilling holes with a spade bit like this, when you break through, a lot of times you get a big, splinters, or can't think of what I'm trying to say here, but you get a lot of the wood will break out and fray out. To avoid that, as soon as you get the pilot tip through, come back from the other direction. pilot will center it up so it's centered with the other hole. And if you can get a shot of underneath on the bottom side, there's very little roughed out on the edge. If I'd have gone all the way through, there'd be big hunks of it hanging out that we'd have to clean off. So I just eyeball this. That's not right. Perfect. That's how we do it. So we're just gluing this strip inside the top bars so the bees have something to build the honeycomb from. And I'm just taking glue. It's not going to take much to hold these in place. So the glue, this is Elmer's Wood Glue Max down here in the bottom. No toxic, no harmful fumes. I hope they're being honest about that, because I know the bees don't like odors, and I can tell just sniffing this glue, not that I'm sniffing glue, but catching a sniff of the glue, it doesn't really have any odor, which is really what you want, because anything that smells funny or any kind of formaldehyde glue or anything like that, the bees will not be happy. They will not like it. So I'm just putting a bead of glue in the bottom of the groove on the top bar, and then squeezing the strip of wood into the middle of it, letting that dry, and then we'll come back and trim off the ends so that it'll sit flat in the hive later. So we've got all of our top bars with the 3/8 by 1/4 inch deep groove, and then we're just, come on, get out of there. I'm just laying a bead of glue. It doesn't take much. I don't really want any glue to squeeze out. I just want some in the bottom of that dado. Squeeze the bar in, make sure it's sitting in there. Yeah, I'm getting just a little bit of squeeze out there. It's a little too much. I don't want that to happen. Cut to where they're pretty snug fit. Some are a little snugger than others. This one is giving me a little bit of problem. It's okay. I've got a fix for that. I've got a fix for that. It's called a mallet. Get it going. Get started. There we go. That's how we deal with that. Go ahead and start. Hey, here's the complete TopBar BeeHive. Made it out of solid oak. Used plans from this TJ Carr and John Bradford. Just a website that I found on the internet, and they had a pretty detailed set of drawings to put the TopBar BeeHive together with. The stand, they didn't have anything for the stand, so I just kind of made that up myself. And the lid I changed up. The lid in the plan used this hardy board, which I guess is kind of like a masonite, and it was just a flat piece with wood around the border of it, and it would just sit flat on the top, which would be okay, I guess. I just thought that it was kind of flimsy, and being flat, I didn't think it really shed water all that well. So I made this lid, which is solid wood. I've got some handles up at the top so you can get a hold of it and lift it up off of there easily, put it back down. It's pretty heavy, pretty substantial. Nothing's really going to be able to lift it off. You know, no predators or anything that might come after the bees. So I'll probably put a link to their plans, and then I will make up drawings of my lid and my stand for anybody that wants to try to duplicate it. The only thing I will say about the lid that might be a disadvantage, I don't know since I'm not all that experienced, but trying to get it on and off with minimal disturbances to the hive, it is kind of heavy. So setting it back on there, you've got to, hold it up and kind of make sure you've got it in the right place and try to ease it down. I think if you let it drop down on top of the hive and shake things up, you might piss off the bees, and then might get upset and come after you. I don't know. We'll just have to see how that goes. I haven't done this yet, so just have to live and learn.